Okay, so this is Gavin and I am going to show you how to clean vinyl records with PVA glue, which sounds mad but actually is incredibly effective. So here we got some standard PVA glue from a craft shop and an old record which is really pretty filthy. I've recorded it in its current state. It doesn't look too bad, but it sounds really crackly. And this is for my friend Tew, who has the same record as this, but she rather unwisely left hers propped up against the radiator, so it's unplayable and warped. So I'm going to record it for her, but I thought I'd clean it first. So here we go. So the first thing to do is to spread a thin layer of PVA glue onto your record. Whoop, that wasn't terribly accurate. I've done this to loads of records before. The only thing obviously is to avoid the label. That should be about right. It's kind of difficult to tell, difficult to judge really. But if you put too much on, it will just take forever to dry. The longest I've ever had to wait is about 5 days for one to dry, which is just ridiculous. It should, if you get it right, take about a day, about 24 hours. But you've got to have enough to make a proper coating as well. And you can see at the moment that the glue is all white. And as it dries, it will go clear, go completely clear. And the idea is that it forms like a skin, which you can peel off a bit like a face mask, you know, like a mud mask or face mask or whatever they are, and it takes all of the dirt with it, which it really does as well. I mean, I've done this to a lot of my favourite records already. Not saying the Magic Roundabout, of course, isn't one of my favourite records. It is fantastic, as you will hear later, and we'll be doing a before and after comparison. But it's not an everyday play. So I will continue doing this. Until, as if by magic, it is finished. Just have to check that we're right to the edges and we haven't got any gaps. Try and get as near to the runoff groove as possible, obviously without getting onto the label. Okay. So you can get a little bit too into this. There's a pretty even layer, as I said, and this does not in any way damage your record. Don't worry, do not panic. No damage at all. It honestly will come up as good as new. Having said that, I've not tried it on anything other than vinyl records. I wouldn't about things like shellac records or anything like that, so I wouldn't advise trying that unless you've got one that you can just do a test on. Shellac being, well, as I've only just quite recently discovered, made from beetle shells, which is just bonkers, but there we are. So there we go. That is done. And now I'm going to leave it to dry out, which usually will take around 12 to 24 hours depending on how thick the coating is. Let's see how it goes. And you'll know when it's all dry and that it will go completely clear. And then we'll do the really fun bit. Okay, so this is the moment of truth. The glue has dried. It actually didn't take 24 hours, considerably less, but I've left it for about that, just to make sure it's completely dried through. And now we'll see whether it has worked. So I've got a pair of sharp tweezers, so I'm just going to lift the edge of this, hopefully. Put a thick enough layer on that it's going to hold together. This is the most satisfying thing once you get it going. God, this really is thin. Okay, usually I put a slightly thicker layer. That's probably why it dried nice and quickly. Should be okay. You can always, here we go. Now look at this. You can only imagine how amazingly satisfying this is. There we go. Okay, and underneath here it is this. Yeah, it's just about all peeling off. Things to be really careful with it because it is very, very thin. It's sort of cellophane thin. There are a few bits that are going to need additional peeling around the edge, but that'll be okay. Okay. And look at this. I don't know if you can see how shiny it looks. Any kind of dust or fingerprints have gone. Obviously it doesn't take scratches off, but really you'd be surprised as to you can see the grooves. I've had these come off before. It's basically like a negative. Anyway, that's the PVA. So I'm just going to go around the edges and check for any little flakes of glue left on here and peel them off. And I'll come back to this in a minute. Okay, that's all done now. So hopefully you can see that is pretty much as new. It's certainly a lot better than it was before. You can even see where the edge of the glue was actually. Little bits of the kind of tide mark around the label where I didn't quite get the glue. So now let's see how it sounds.
Mr. Rusty was looking at the moon through his telescope. "Looks quite close," he said. "What are you looking at?" said Florence. "The moon," said Mr. Rusty. "I wouldn't mind going there to have a look round. No, indeed, I wouldn't mind going there." "I don't wish to stifle the spirit of enterprise," said Zebedee, "but it has been done." "Oh, you," said Florence. In the garden, Florence couldn't find Dougal anywhere. So she asked Brian. "Well," said Brian, "far be it from me to tell tales about my old chum, but he does appear to have lost his cool, rather. Whatever do you mean? Said Florence. He's flipped. Flipped? Don't you understand English? Said Brian. I thought I was making myself abundantly clear. Our shaggy friend has gone dotty. Oh, said Florence. Is that all? I thought it was something serious. Brian laughed. He's over here. Of course, I'm only joking. Really? Yes, I know, said Florence. Dougal did appear to be up to something unusual, to say the least. Now, let me see. The square on the hypotenuse equals the volume of Archimedes minus the square root of Pythagoras, which gives us a grand total of 7.5. Except on Thursdays, which have 31. Yes. What are you doing, Dougal? Asked Florence. Isn't it obvious? Said Dougal. No, it's not, said Brian. Nothing's obvious to you, great oaf, said Dougal. I don't suppose you could even spell geometry, which is what I am concerning myself with at the moment. I am conducting an experiment in dimensions. Of the moon? Said Florence. Moon? Who cares about the moon? This is to do with the exact sizing of a lump of sugar. How did the moon get into this? Very important work, said Brian. Yes, it is, said Dougal. So I'll trouble you. Oh, swallowed me chalk. Florence had a look round. I'm very impressed, said Brian. Now do let me get on, said Dougal. I'm sure Isaac Newton didn't have snails bothering him. Who's Isaac Newton? Said Brian. Did he invent sugar? But Dougal was too busy experimenting to reply. Let me see. What's all this then? Said Brian. I can see all my results ruined with you two, said Dougal. 3'10", said Florence. Thank you, said Dougal. Now, 3'10" by... 3'10"? I didn't know I'd got sugar that size. No, I'm 3'10", said Florence. Back to the drawing board, old thing, said Brian. And don't add in the date. In spite of interruptions, said Dougal icily, I have